If you had the occasion to be in Greenville, South Carolina 40 years ago, this is what you would have seen in the heart of the city. A wide, unattractive, four-lane main street running down the middle of town with parking places on either side. A treeless landscape, a four-lane bridge, vintage 1960s, crossing and completely obscuring the Reedy River and her Class 8 waterfall. A derelict service station that had long been closed and overgrown. A haven for homeless people and a hideout for most any kind of illicit activity you could name. A kudzu-infested riverbank. A river polluted by decades of runoff from textile factories upstream. The water ran a myriad of colors depending on the chemical that was dumped into the river on any given day. This was downtown Greenville in 1960. People shopped there in spite of the drawbacks because that was the only place to shop, until the large shopping malls were added to the fringes of the city. Then the downtown died, literally and figuratively. The landmark Poinsett Hotel closed. The ever-present Ivy's department store shuttered her doors. The lone restaurant was Charlie's Steakhouse. The historical Five and Dime, where a well-documented sit-in was staged as Greenville became a part of the integration process in the early 60s, was soon left empty. For 150 years prior to the demise of downtown, the Reedy River had been the center of Greenville. It was the location of the first settlers who used the falls to power primitive mills. By the late 18th century, the downtown riverbanks were lined with cotton warehouses, vibrant textile mills, a carriage factory, a cigar factory, and numerous auxiliary companies that supported the economy. After the desertion of Main Street in the early 1960s, a visionary group recognized the need for a master plan to revitalize downtown Greenville. The focus was on the north end of Main Street. A major component of the project was the construction of the new Hyatt Hotel, the pride of downtown and the signature piece of the revitalization project. As the four-lane Main Street was narrowed to 2 lanes, sidewalks were put in place and large trees were planted. It became obvious the still seedy and derelict area around the Reedy River at the south end of Main Street should be the next phase in the rebirth of downtown Greenville. Enter the Carolina Foothills Garden Club. What is the Carolina Foothills Garden Club? A garden club organized in 1938 by 5 women involved into the Carolina Foothills Garden Club, when in 1952 the membership of the then 30 women was invited to join the Garden Club of America. From this platform, the small group of Greenville women launched their love affair with the falls on the Reedy River and the surrounding area in downtown Greenville. As early as 1967, the club took an interest in the preservation of the area around the Reedy River. The initial reason for selecting the Reedy River and her falls was the realization that damaging erosion was creating enormous problems for the already struggling river. A large shopping center had replaced all the beautiful trees that had once shaded the campus of Furman University, which had rested adjacent to the river from 1851 until its move to the outskirts of Greenville in 1958. The next 10 years, 1958 to 1968, saw the river and its banks change into a dumping ground for local industries. Chemicals, trash, old tires, garbage cans, and other debris followed their course down the Reedy River, plummeting over the 50-foot falls. When the women of the Carolina Foothills Garden Club set out to improve the area around the Reedy River Falls in 1967, it is doubtful any of them ever envisioned the final results 40 years later. From 1967 to 1972, Phase 1 of Falls Park was realized. The Garden Club set out to reclaim the abused area with support from the city, Furman University, and the Planning Commission. The university deeded 6 acres to the city for the proposed Reedy River Falls Historic Park. In 1973, due to efforts of the Garden Club, the park was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1975, the Garden Club in the park received the Founders Fund Award from the Garden Club of America, which carried with it a $5,000 prize, which was naturally invested in the park. A small house, long forgotten and abused, was reclaimed and restored in 1976. Located on Main Street, adjacent to the new park, the cottage was built around 1810. It was one of the few structures from the early 1800s left standing in Greenville. Before the cottage was rescued by the Garden Club, it had lapsed into terrible repair, her last use being a gas station. A local foundation provided the funding for the purchase of the land and the building. The renovation expenses were covered by the Garden Club and the city. Initially, the newly restored cottage was used as headquarters of the Metropolitan Arts Council and served as an art gallery. The cottage was owned by the city, but leased to the Garden Club, who collected the rent and cared for the surrounding gardens and other maintenance. In the early 1980s, the city created a tax increment financing district. This vehicle would allow the city to issue industrial revenue bonds to make improvements that would be repaid through taxes from the new development area around the river. The renovation of an old cotton warehouse was the beginning of the new commerce in the area. New office space in an historic building overlooked the Reedy River. The park was once again expanded in the late 80s when 6.69 acres were purchased from the county. By 1987, the Garden Club had hired the services of land design research planners from Baltimore to design and engineer a master beautification plan for the now 21-acre park. Plans for an even larger, better Falls Park included scenic overlooks, nature trails, a stone land bridge, a new entry, and 6 specialty gardens. May 1990 witnessed the grand reopening of Falls Park. That spring, the restored Falls Cottage became a restaurant and an art gallery. A stone shelter placed along the river was a gift to the garden. The River Lodge, as it is called, added another amenity to the park. That year, the long-awaited $42 million Peace Center for the Performing Arts opened just 2 blocks from the main entry to the park. The west end of Greenville now had 2 anchors for future development, the park and the Peace Center. Almost 10 years later, the grand finale for Falls Park began. In 1999, the viability of the landscape plan of land design research, the team originally hired by the Carolina Foothills Garden Club, was confirmed by Clemson University's Reedy River Master Plan. An independent Reedy River Corridor Vision Plan also corroborated the original concept. The concept of transforming the park into a regional attraction was introduced. The natural beauty of the falls and a world-class pedestrian bridge were presented as critical components of the plan. The biggest challenge and obstacle to the final development of the park was a 4-lane steel and concrete bridge that passed directly over the magnificent falls of the Reedy. The removal of the bridge was necessary to free the falls. Built in 1960 for $670,000, the bridge was, in the words of a local historian, a desecration of our founding site, which was once the gathering place for the Cherokee Indians and the grist mill of founder Richard Paris. Historians were quick to point out that going to the falls was absolutely the only recreation that people had after they had seen the train come in from Columbia and sat on the tomb in the cemetery. At some time or other, everybody walked to the falls, unless they were hopeless invalids. The study to remove the modern bridge began as early as 1987. The South Carolina Department of Highways said there had never been a request to remove or dismantle a bridge in use. They were not sure how a situation like this could be handled. I guess we would put it on our list of various other requests, was the only solution provided. 10,000 vehicles a day use the bridge. The major factor in removal would be the cost involving reworking roads in the vicinity to handle traffic that presently was using the bridge. Numerous studies were made to determine the fate of this bridge. The presiding mayor at the time was quoted as saying, "We are going to look like the biggest idiots for taking it down." In order to remove the bridge, the city had to get permission from the state and federal government. Editorials, surveys, studies, heated city council meetings, letters to the editors of the newspapers were flying. The arguments, pro and con, were advertised in every media. Carolina Foothills members were strong advocates for the bridge's removal. Finally, in August 2002, 15 years after the initial study, the last car drove over the bridge before the long-awaited demolition began. With the final removal of the 1960s-style Camperdown Bridge, the way was open for the maximization of the falls that had for years been hidden. Members of the Carolina Foothills Garden Club were actively involved in all phases of the planning for the new park. They played major roles in the approval of final plans, including the selection of the architect for the pedestrian bridge, which would replace the old, ponderous 1960s concrete structure. The $12.4 million park was funded by the City of Greenville hospitality tax on restaurant meals and hotel rooms. One last campaign to assure the quality and special projects of the park was led by 2 members of the Carolina Foothills Garden Club. In Full Bloom 2004. The In Full Bloom 2004 campaign raised $3.6 million in private funds from the community. A portion of these funds was used to purchase amenities for the new park, benches, swings, and sculpture. The remainder of the fund, almost $2.6 million, is now managed by the Community Foundation of Greenville. These dollars are the emergency fund to maintain the first-class quality of Falls Park for future generations. On September the 10th, 2004, the ribbon was cut, allowing Greenvillians the opportunity to cross the Reedy on the magnificent pedestrian bridge and to enjoy their newest park. The new entry plaza from Main Street gives easy access to the 21-acre park. The one-of-a-kind pedestrian bridge designed by Miguel Rosales of Boston is suspended through the branches of the large oak trees, providing magnificent views of the waterfalls long forgotten. The plantings are rotated seasonally. Significant works of outdoor sculpture enhance the grounds. Falls Park on the Reedy had completed her 36-year journey. The economic impact has been significant. This last clip will convey better than I the final result of the vision and tenacity of one small garden club in concert with a progressive city council and generous citizens.
With Reedy River Falls Park becoming the centerpiece of the city, it sets a standard of excellence in what we want to be all about. It reflects our values. It's very green. The green in Greenville, I think, is perhaps the most important thing about Greenville and the image of what Greenville is all about.
The best tourist attraction is something that the natives enjoy every day, day in and day out. And I think that's what we've made in the park and what we're trying to make in River Place. It is a place you can come just because you can't think of anything else to do, and you know when you get there you'll have a great time.
Well, we are just coming off a wonderful celebration in upgrading the Falls Park, which is celebrating not only a wonderful resource in terms of the Reedy River and the waterfall, but also Greenville's birthplace. And this is a really great case study of how the folks in Greenville have come together and recognized the importance of this place and have devoted lots of money, time, and effort to protecting it and upgrading it.
The public sector graciously donated more than $3 million for the endowment for the park, and to me that is a real example of the people believing what the city was trying to do and put all of their funds behind it to assure its success.
And we'd love to go down to the park because, again, we're very close, and walk in the park and go down on the Reedy River and wade in the Reedy River in the summertime. And you know, it's so convenient, and to have that green space right there and accessible. We can ride our bicycles. You know, it's a very bicycle-friendly area.
If we can be greener than most cities in this country, if we can be cleaner, if we can have a higher standard of excellence in our urban architecture and our design of public spaces, I think that alone makes us distinctive and raises Greenville to a level that few cities in this country would achieve. We don't have to be the biggest city in the region, but we can be the best city. And that's the standard, Reedy River Falls Park.